Welcome to the wonderful world of wine, exploring all things wine with you. We are your hosts, Kim Simone and Mark Lenzi, and you can find us on our website, thewww.wine. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the wonderful world of wine, exploring trending topics in wine and talking to interesting folks in the wine industry. I'm your host, Kim Simone. I'm here with Mark Lenzi. How are you today, Mark?
Everything's great, Kim, and you?
Good, yeah, doing well. Today we have a special guest calling us all the way from Italy. Today we have Molly Bossardt with us. How are you today, Molly?
I'm great.
So when we have special guests on the show, we like to have you introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little bit about what you do and how you're involved in wine, in the wine industry. So I'm going to let you tell our listeners what's up with you.
Okay, great. I have a digital marketing agency called Bread and Butter Digital Marketing. We support primarily wine brands and wineries with all of their direct-to-consumer marketing. So think social media advertising, email marketing, even updating their website occasionally if D2C is a top priority. And I'm pretty active on LinkedIn in terms of like thought leadership around how the wine industry needs to evolve and should be evolving. And as a spinoff on that, I've decided to start launching workshops that are a bit more educational and help support people in a more like low touch capacity. So follow me for more information on those workshops as we keep exploring that.
Different things in the wine industry. It seems like that's a lot of things to touch on. I think for the marketing part of it, sometimes we talk to marketers, oftentimes we talk to authors, and there's so much going on in the industry from this perspective of the wineries and then how do they engage with their consumers.
Yeah, and I mean the reason it sounds like a lot is because essentially there is no silver bullet. There's no one thing that you can do that's going to get you sales, right? So when it comes to marketing, you have to do all of these things and you have to do them relatively well. And at the top really is strategy and understanding who your consumer is and how you're communicating with them. And if that's not drilled in and on point, then your messaging, your marketing is just not going to work. It's not going to convert.
So for our listeners out there, a lot of people always wonder how we find guests on the show, Molly. And I just want everyone to know Molly writes excellent articles on the wine industry. And we found an article she wrote, "The Wine World Has a Snob Problem." And you based it on feedback you got from two sources. One was the younger generation that you said does not like the taste of wine, and your mom, who was being shamed for how she drank her wine. And can you talk about the article and the sources and how this came about?
Yeah, so essentially, I think that this problem runs very deep, especially in America, where wine is seen as elite, right? I mean, I live in Italy now, and wine is everybody drinks wine here. You know what I mean? It's not based on any kind of class system or anything like that. And I do think things are probably shifting a little bit in America, but it still does seem to be a beverage for the wealthy, more or less, right? And obviously the wine world is having a hard time. People are not consuming wine. So I think one way to deal with this is to make wine a little, like, take it, this is a challenge, but like it's on a pedestal. If we kind of take it down off of the pedestal and make it more normal consumption, a normal product that you would consume with your dinner, then I think people would feel less intimidated about it. And I also think what the article got at was Gen Z, and even, my mother, I'll share that story in a minute. They're intimidated by wine because they really believe that there's a right way to enjoy wine and a wrong way to enjoy wine. And they're not getting that from nowhere, right? Like this is a message that, for better or worse, is coming out of the wine industry. It also goes as far as to say your taste is either bad or your taste is good, right? If someone enjoys a sweet wine, the wine industry will say you have bad taste. Your taste needs to mature, right? Even saying mature, it indicates that like you're down here and you need to get, you need to raise the bar. And eventually after you've grown up a little bit, then you will understand and appreciate a really bold tannic red. And taste preferences are shifting dramatically. If you look at any of the stats coming out of like Silicon Valley Bank, you can see that consumption of more aromatic white wines is increasing, whereas consumption of, our heavy, bolder reds more tannic reds is decreasing. So there's a lot to unpack there, but essentially if we can meet the customer where they are, which is pretty much what all of my writing is about, then we have a better chance at getting new customers, right? Like getting new people to enjoy wine.
So, Molly, you talked about tasting wines, and at one point I read something that you mentioned how we assume that new drinkers evolve when they're tasting wine. And Kim and I talk about this a lot, where we recommend you start with something sweet, then you go to a lighter style, then you move to more dry, structured wines. Is that happening? Are you seeing that when in marketing world, that where you have to change how you're marketing based on taste changes?
It's not happening in the way that we think. So first of all, the largest consumers, the people who are propping up the wine industry, are middle-aged women, and their taste preferences tend to be in the, like, again, that aromatic white wine, the rosé, the sparkling wine, so lighter. And the generation that is primarily a male, an older man who is consuming those reds. And this isn't across the board. And obviously there's occasions for everything, and people change how they drink in the summer versus in winter. But the data supports that there's growth in the white wine segment, right? Whereas there's decline in the red wine segment. And it's nuanced, but yeah.
And you think this is more than just sort of the changing tastes, but for we've been in the wine industry for a long time, me and Mark. And so we sort of always see this pendulum shift where this, let's take Chardonnay, for example, where at one point the trend was big, crazy, oaky California style Chardonnay. And then it sort of swung back to lighter, brighter, more Chablis-like, and then back again to the big, heavy oak thing. So you're saying that it's more than just that sort of cyclical change of people's tastes?
I'm not entirely sure. I don't think there's enough data to support if it's cyclical or not. But if you look at who is consuming and who is buying and where their preferences are, there becomes a tension, right? Because, like, again, older generation who spent more money on the bigger, bolder reds is they're not drinking as much and they're not spending as much. So the wine industry, like right now, I mean, taste preferences is one thing, but like capturing different generations is really the most important thing that wineries need to be doing, because again, older generations, they are drinking way less, whether for health reasons or whatnot, like retiring, so money constraints, etc. Or a lot of people, as we know, they purchased a ton of wine during the pandemic, and so they're drinking through that, and they're still drinking through that wine that they purchased. So there's a lot of factors. We all know, okay, that generation is aging out. We need to be focusing on millennials, even Gen X, which is like 50-year-olds, give or take. Gen X is a smaller generation than millennials, so I think it gets underlooked, but they're more mature and they have more spending power than a lot of millennials. But millennials are hitting middle age, right? Like 40s, 30s, 40s. And so targeting that demographic is vital. And a lot of people want to focus on Gen Z too. I think it is important to talk about Gen Z. A lot of Gen Z is still in not of legal drinking age.
Right.
So
my teenagers are Gen Z. So
exactly. I mean, I think it's important. I think that some brands are going to appeal to a younger generation and be able to grow with them. I think, if you're looking at a legacy, like a family legacy winery that's been around for a while, I would focus in on that millennial and Gen X. And the issue is they do not consume the way the older generation does. They don't purchase as much. They're not quite as loyal. They want to explore. They want to have experiences. So reaching them becomes a challenge for wineries that have relied on, hey, we're going to have our wine club members come in and they're going to buy a bunch of wine. And this whole wine club, this old way of wine club, it's just shifting a lot. So I don't think it's built for the millennials, right? It's not built for the millennial generation. I think they're scared of commitment. They want variety. They want more experiences and more human interaction too.
I would say, judging from the folks who I know who are of that younger generation, I'm a Gen Xer. So I think that so much of what you are saying absolutely rings true for people who I know in a variety of these generations, that whole idea with experiences, less about the reputation or cachet of a particular, your whole point about sort of the wine clubs, absolutely true. I don't know a single younger person who is interested in, anything like that.
Yeah. In fact, I wrote a LinkedIn post, it must have been a couple months ago, about how wine clubs are how wine clubs are dying and social clubs are thriving. And some of this is from my personal experience, I was living in Virginia before I moved to Italy, and I was part of a social club, and that's where I spent most of my time and a lot of my money as well. And it's just like such a different, I didn't go there because I was getting discounts on products. I was going there because I wanted to meet people. I wanted to expand my professional network. I wanted to go to interesting events. And a lot of those events included wine tastings, right? And yeah, there's a built-in community of friends there. So I think the wine industry, it could lean into that, right? Like wine is social. And I think millennials want to socialize. BD on if Gen Z does. I mean, Kim, you're probably more plugged in since you have like kids in that generation, but there's a lot that we could tackle on that generation. And like, I think a lot of them are online chronically and a little bit apprehensive to socialize. And if that plays into, what's going on with consumption of alcohol too. Their consumption of alcohol is way lower than millennials was at their age. So that's a bit of a tangent, but yes, if you can look at like bringing socializing into the wine club, like into your wine club, and it can't feel forced either, right? So it's a delicate balance. And you obviously have to look at the average age of your members, right? And I would imagine that they're older. And do you want to do something like a young members clubs? Or some people are experimenting with subscriptions. So it's a little bit less of a commitment. But I think you need to be willing I think that most wineries need to go look at their data, see what trends are happening, right? Like what has been shifting over the past couple of years, and then project out, okay, what's going to be happening in 5 years from now, right? Like what do we need to prepare for? And then assuming that you are going to be targeting a younger generation, creating both products and wine clubs that would appeal to them and experiences that would appeal to them, right? Like create a culture that appeals to this generation.
And making it specific to them, how they perceive the wine and how they perceive the idea of how do I interact with it. I think that is so smart. You're really meeting them where they are.
Yeah. And I think one of my big frustrations, and this is hard. Like it's not always something that's well received by the industry, but one of my big frustrations is that the wine industry is probably one of the only industries that doesn't listen to their customers, and they just kind of like, and not everybody does, right? They just do what they want to do because they know it's the best. I've been a fly on the wall when people are deciding how they're going to approach a wine, if they're going to age it in, like if they're going to age it in barrels or whatever. And I'm hearing these people talk, and never once does anybody say, oh, well, like what was more popular last year? Or like, what was the feedback from the customers? Like it doesn't come into play in most of these winemaking decisions. And I do understand there's like, it's a bit of a craft, like it is a craft, right? It's a craft and an art, but I do think you also need to be mindful of, it's also a business, and you need to be appealing to your customers if you're running a business.
You're listening to The Wonderful World of Wine, and we are your hosts, Mark Lenzi and Kim Simone, exploring all things wine with you. Our program is supported by Franklin Public Radio. You can find us on our website, thewww.wine. Today, we are joined by Molly Bossardt, and you can find Molly at her website, breadandbutterdigitalmarketing.com, and you can follow her on her LinkedIn page. So, Molly, you were talking about the generations, and I had a question about, you wrote something where I think you stated wine has survived thousands of years and it will always endure. It's kind of the theme out there in the wine world. What generation is still thinking that, or is the hardest to kind of think it's going to survive, if that makes sense? Is wine still going to survive no matter what people think? Based on what? On how do you market to that person who thinks that?
Well, this is going to be a tough pill to swallow. Wine will endure, and the wineries that are willing to evolve will endure, but the ones that aren't will not survive.
As far as marketing, they have to evolve their marketing?
Yes. Yeah. They have to evolve their marketing. They have to evolve their business model. They have to evolve, unless they're a well-established legacy winery, and they're seeing that a lot of people in younger generations are consuming them, respect them, and like their numbers are projected to be doing well, then they'll be doing well. But the ones, like, I truly believe in any, like, I don't know any business or any person or like anybody who could just keep doing the same thing over and over again, despite looking at data like we're looking at, and not evolve and do well. You know what I'm saying? Like, even in your personal life, like in my business has evolved. I'm, a small business owner. I think evolution is crucial for owning a business.
So based on that, you had mentioned earlier that people now are not loyal to a product or a brand, but the big brands are still, that's what people kind of go to. So the big brands haven't really, to me, changed how they market. It still seems to be working. So how is that happening that they're not really changing, but people are still going to them all the time? Is it just because they're out there more than the little guys, or?
Well, I mean, there's a lot at play there, right? They are better known because they have more money behind them, right? So it's much easier. I also think that majority of the people that I work with are smaller businesses, right? So they're not necessarily competing with the, big players in wine. It's kind of a different thing, right? It's a lot of the wineries that I'm working with are small family run businesses or mid-sized businesses that rely a lot on tasting room, right? Sales and getting people into the tasting room, and wine club. Like those are their biggest revenue generators. And then secondly, the direct to consumer space. So I think in terms of the bigger brands, they are spending money on marketing. That's another thing. Like they do market the brand, and it's not as much as the beer industry, right? It's not as much as the liquor industry. And if you look, wine got hit harder than those industries. And so to me, it correlates to, yes, they might be doing better relative to other small businesses. But if you look at them across other aspects of the industry, I mean, beer is now getting hit really hard, but it happened first in wine. And I think it's a marketing problem.
How much resistance do you see from your clients or potential clients to even the idea of doing marketing? Because I know, having worked with some other small businesses, sometimes there's this hesitation, like, oh my gosh, why would I spend the money on this? If you're not like seeing immediate results from the plan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that at this point, especially because market conditions are so like not what they were, people are willing to try and people realize they do need to change, and that marketing is a lever that is more in their control than some other levers, right? So, and it's also probably something they haven't been doing well. So yeah, I would say no. Like at this point, people do understand that they need to be marketing, and they might be resistant to spending the money. And there's some real, I feel for them because they have some real financial constraints. The wine industry, it's lower margins, and it can be a little bit harder to allocate some money to that. But again, it's like, unfortunately, we live in like a capitalist society. So it's survival of, the fittest, essentially, right? Like or the businesses that are going to survive are the businesses that are willing to do things differently and, sell their wine. Marketing is selling, right? Like, again, yeah, that's my perspective. I'm a marketer, so, take it with a grain of salt.
So based on that, Molly, you do phenomenal workshops where you try to get the customers, the wineries, the brands to listen to you, how you can help them with marketing. What feedback are you getting from them of their concerns if they market too much, or what's the major concern you hear? And based on what Kim was asking you, if someone says to you, well, I'll just do it myself, what do you say to the person that says, I'll save the money, I'll do it myself, I might think I'm doing fine?
Well, okay. So I usually don't get I think people are trying, they're frustrated because either they don't know what they're doing, right? I get a lot of that, or they don't know what they should be doing, right? Like if you do it yourself, great. But like the problem is you don't know what you don't know. If you haven't been doing marketing, like as a profession, it can be a little bit hard to know what you should be doing. There's a lot of free information out there. So you can probably, like, I don't know, I've been thinking about AI and how this plays in. AI is a really good tool, but it gets things wrong all the time. Like as someone who's been doing marketing, as someone who's been doing marketing for 10 years, I work with AI, but I have to correct it. Or I have to say, I don't think you're seeing this the way that like me as someone who's been doing this for 10, 15 years sees it. And I think we need to like readjust. And then it's always like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. Which doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence in what in what it's actually producing. Okay, now for the person who says I'll do it myself. So this is an interesting thing. This is why I'm running these workshops, because there is going to be this segment of the wine industry that wants to do it on their own, maybe feels like they have a handle on it or like it should be easy. So I wanted to create these workshops, and then eventually TBD on when this will happen, and maybe you can check out, but like a group coaching program essentially to help support those businesses that would like to do it themselves, but maybe need some guidance from someone who's been doing it for a lot longer, right? Like you can't rely on AI to help you with all of this. So that's how my business is evolving. I mean, I still do one-on-one work with clients for the people who just don't want to touch it and kind of like want to leave it to to the experts. But for people who want to keep it in-house or who like are a little tighter on cash, I have these workshops and these like educational supports, again, potentially a coaching program to support those people because there's a lot of them. And again, like it depends upon your business, but I think that they're getting hit almost the hardest with the contraction in the market.
So let's talk about wine influencers versus wine marketing sources.
Ooh,
We've
what a good question.
we've interviewed influencers, and that's all kind of you see on social media. It starts trends, it gets things going on YouTube, blah blah blah. But when someone says, "I'll just pay an influencer to keep putting my product out there," is that as effective for a brand as versus marketing? Is there separation of that?
So if we think of marketing as a pie, right? Like a whole circular pie, influencer marketing is a piece of that pie, right? Influencer marketing is just one channel. Then you have email marketing. Then you have digital advertising. Then you have like, regular advertising, i.e. the radio or TV. Then you have organic social media, right? So that's your own Instagram channel. That's your own LinkedIn page. So influencer marketing, again, like I go back to this, and that's why when I said I do all this stuff, it's because realistically, not one piece of that pie is going to solve your problem. It might like get you some sales, float you for a little bit. You'll see some like increases, hopefully, if you work with the right influencers. But in order for you to have a really sustainable business, you need to be doing everything in that pie.
That makes sense. And based on that, I think my biggest pet peeve with brands or anybody who's on social media, and you mentioned AI, I think a lot of people are just automatically generating content in the fact that they forgot that people still need to communicate with them when they have questions on their product or their brand. I can't tell you how many times I've reached out to somebody on a social media page or a contact form and get zero response. And it gets me frustrated that they must be spending all this money for promoting their product, but nobody is coming back to me when I have interest in their product. Do you see that as a problem or hear of that as far as marketing that says I'm marketing, but I need to communicate with my customers better or my consumers better?
That is not necessarily a problem. I've heard there's like ways to automate it. If you're running your social media, you can create like automated responses to people. But I mean, you should have, so for the clients that I manage their socials or run their ads for them, typically we try to have someone in-house, so tasting room manager or someone who, like an ops person who's on site to monitor the Facebook pages, the comments, the Instagram messages, things like this, just to ensure, that people are getting responded to. I mean, obviously anybody who's running social media will flag it and send it to the right person if they're doing their job. But again, this gets to like kind of the core of the issues. Like it's a team effort. It is like a full-time job. So this is why it's really hard for the brands that are trying to, who are really small, who are trying to just like have someone maybe post social media for them when they can. Like they're going to get inconsistent results if they do it that way.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe it must be me. But yeah, you're right. Sometimes you get the automated response, someone will get back to you, and then you're relying on them to forward that to somebody to get your response.
You just have to have a system in place, right? And you need to know it, and everybody else needs to know it too, right? I mean, like, again, marketing is so, it's an art and a science like winemaking. It's a lot of it is systems and understanding how it all works together, right? Like, so automated email flows, automated response chats, like in your Instagram. And there's a lot of behind the scenes, like techie things that need to be happening and need to be, monitored to make sure that they don't break. And then there's the art, which is how are we communicating what we do and why we're different, and like why should anybody care? And like it's not how long you've aged your wine. They don't really care. And they want to hear your story, your personal story. The more personal you can get, the better. It can be hard if you had a legacy winery and you've kind of inherited this. That's not a story that people relate to, but maybe it's a story that people are interested in. They want to like peek behind the scenes. And one of my big theories is people are really fatigued. They don't trust big companies, but they trust people. Mm-hmm. And I see this firsthand with content. So, right, like I manage social media pages for clients. And so I will see what content performs well. And by far, the top performing content is content where there is somebody's face, where somebody is talking directly to camera. Like these are things that, I mean, look at TikTok. TikTok is a huge channel, and we could talk about this, but the top performing content on TikTok is not dancing videos, guys. It's people talking directly to camera.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned story, because Kim and I are huge on telling a wine story, and people in the wine world story. You mentioned something in an article recently that wine is becoming easy to ignore and it needs attention. Is that based on because they're not putting out their story? They're putting out all this maybe technical stuff and
Yes.
not saying this is us, this is the family behind here.
Yeah, I think a lot of the wine industry has relied on like marketing features, not benefits, and marketing like features, not story, right? So
Yeah, but
the
the big brands have a story, like say Barefoot or something. I mean, what is their story? They really have no story, right? So
I don't know. I mean, those aren't my clients, to be quite frank. So my clients are much smaller and they do have
they all have
stories.
stories, yeah.
Yeah, and it can be challenging. I do have some clients who, don't really, this is their second business, so they don't want to like put primary focus on themselves as the story. And I have to be honest, it's very challenging. I think that leveraging the person and the personality and their story is vital, just because again, like nobody like, and so this is the other thing, like a lot of times people will like hide behind their label or hide behind their product, and people just don't quite care anymore. And they're consuming based on interest and intrigue. And if somebody has a cool story, they'll be like, oh, I want to try that wine. And you can make a cool story out of something that isn't even about you. I was talking to a sommelier, and sommeliers do this actually. If you are working directly with customers, so like I think that the bigger brands should be sitting down with those people. And one of the best places to get stories is through sommeliers, right? Through people who are actually doing the tastings and who are engaging with your customers. You can learn so much from them and you can hear their stories. There's a sommelier down in Napoli that we're connected with, and he told me this story of, it was like a Greek mythology, like around this one wine grape that I happened to be drinking that night. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Like I would never know. So there's stories everywhere. It's like, why are we just focusing on this tastes like this? This was aged here. This is like, whatever. I think it's boring. I think that we need to lean into more interest. And again, talking to the people who are like doing this daily, they have interesting stories. So I think if you can leverage that, you're ahead of the game.
So we had read a recent post that you had in your Substack regarding, you had mentioned that earlier in the show that the wine world has a snob problem. And one of the things that I really took away from it was this idea that wine has kind of made itself harder than it needs to be. That was one of your quotes. And I think that a lot of this that you've been talking about really comes back to that. How do we simplify it? Is it this inclusion of the stories, or is it more this listening to the consumer and what they are looking for?
I think it's a lot. It's listening to the consumer. It's also listening to how the consumer speaks about the product and mimicking that language in your messaging.
Huh.
I do this all the time. So one like cheat code is you can look at reviews, customer reviews of your wine or wherever you have these, right? And actually put that into ChatGPT and say, write a description of my wine in the way that my customers speak about my wine, right? So that's one way to do it.
That's really smart. That would have occurred to me because I don't have a marketing brain. Wow, very cool.
Did that fully answer your question? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of more that what we were talking about at the beginning about sort of this generational shift and the different ways that people of different ages are looking at wine, how they're consuming wine, and how they're engaging with it, I think.
Well, another issue, I think, with like how you talk about how a wine tastes is people don't really understand some of the words, right, that you're using, or some of the descriptors. So like if you can, again, like use language that people are going to understand, that's like a little bit less, I'm in the wine industry and this is just how people talk about wine.
Yeah. And I think, and that has been like always such a problem. This differentiation. And I know Mark and I have talked about this many times before about needing to have kind of a language that people understand because it is a specialized field. I mean, it's like if you were a bunch of surgeons getting together and talking about doing a surgery and somebody who is not a doctor was in the room, they wouldn't understand a single thing that you were talking about.
Right.
So I kind of feel like in some regards, wine is that way, but then there has to be that way to translate it to the consumer so that they get it as well. And I think that one of the things that jumped out at me from this article was that you said that you got a lot of feedback from SOMs. So I was actually curious, how do they feel about the idea of making it simpler for the consumer to understand?
Yeah, I think it starts with asking questions, engaging where people's knowledge is, right? Because, and some people do this really well and some people maybe not so well. Sometimes people assume that you know nothing and then you're more or less talking down to them, or like it's boring for them. You're not holding them. So the best SOMs are the ones that are asking, and then also asking, especially like if you think about SOMs at a restaurant, personal taste, and then trying to like push them beyond that personal taste or try something new, right? So these are ways that like on the one-on-one customer level, you can like have better communication, is ask more questions. And then more broadly speaking, like if anybody looks at like a cocktail menu at a cool cocktail bar, like they have wild descriptions. And that is what's getting Gen Z, right? Like it is different. People kind of have a better understanding of like what, I don't know, a gin tastes like. But I think that you can make it a little bit more fun. If wine was like a little bit less stiff and a little bit more fun, I do think younger people would be less intimidated and be more excited to try it.
Yeah, it still does have this sort of stuffy, old-fashioned kind of a reputation. It's as much as we try to make it fun with all the, the bubbles and things like that, it definitely still has this legacy of, being snobby and for old white dudes.
Yeah, and obviously people are evolving beyond that, and you see certain brands that are doing really well, and like those brands are connecting to Gen Z. I don't know if you've heard of Whiny Baby, but she's like killing it with Gen Z, and she's talking their talk. She is Gen Z, so that helps. And so it's authentic. She's building a brand that like is for her generation, and it basically is for her. So it's not going to work like that well for other types of businesses. But I think, again, get back to the evolution piece. But
I have to follow up, Molly, because I believe you said something about complexity in wine is what makes it meaningful. But then we say that we're at times too geeky when we want to promote or market something. So is part of the goal when you're doing marketing for someone, if you say to them, they say, well, we have this product, we're doing this special thing to it. You're thinking, well, that's really too complicated. Is there a certain way you market to get feedback if a product is misunderstood because it's too technical or it's labeled wrong or something like that? Or is there a way that you can market a product to get that feedback? Does anyone look for that?
I'm not really sure what you mean. Sorry.
So if someone comes to you with a product and they say, I want to promote that I do malolactic, I have this special process, whatever, do you say to them that's too complicated to market?
Or just that nobody cares?
Yeah.
Well, I think there's different levels to it, right? Like I think that's not a marketing message I would start with, right? Like I would start with something else. You can bring that in to part of your like marketing piece. Marketing is a funnel essentially, right? Like when you say hello to someone, they don't want to know all of your entire, like, I don't know, what's a good analogy for this, but like your entire backstory. They want to get to know you, right? And what is that like version of you that you show right away? It's not going to be talking about like a bunch of degrees, hopefully, or whatever. Like this is kind of how I'm seeing like the wine world is like, okay, let's talk about all of our technical stuff, but like maybe we need like a better greeting and a better, more welcoming way. And to me, that's humans. Like if you can bring it down to humanity, people buy from people. So if you can start with that message, then, you're marketing the brand first. Then you can market a specific product to people who already know about the brand. So they're already like somewhat bought into you and your story. And this is how you do it through like the technical aspects of marketing, again, like a funnel. You can segment to speak directly to people who have purchased in the past. So they're, they know you. And so you can send an email directly to them. You can send a much more technical email to your wine club members, because not only do they know you, they know your wine and they're all bought into your wine. And so something like that would probably make them more excited than than somebody who just got served an ad from Facebook and knows nothing about you. They don't care about the mallow that you're, how you're doing this. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You mentioned email marketing too. I want to follow up on that. Is that something that's not very popular anymore? Does the consumer, care about getting emails anymore from someone's brand or hearing about what's going on with their brand? Or is it a nuisance nowadays?
Well, if you look at direct to consumer, the biggest revenue driver is email still.
So wow.
Email marketing is extremely vital. Yeah. And it's the cheapest one too. So I always recommend, starting with email marketing. And if you look at like advertising, advertising. Facebook ads have just gotten more and more expensive. And so people are a little bit less skeptical or more skeptical too, to making purchases, or hesitant, maybe not skeptical, hesitant. So it used to be a lot more effective to run ads, cheaper and easier to run like sales ads on Facebook. Things have shifted. So yeah, email is still really important. I think a lot of wineries do it the wrong way, quite frankly. You know, they're doing newsletters, which aren't compelling. And they're like like a newsletter is something that I would have opened in 2010 and cared about, you know, like they're just really not the best way to communicate. And you should be segmenting your list and you should be talking to people differently. Again, like I just said, talk to the consumer or the person that knows nothing about you in one way, and then talk to your, you know, most loyal customers in a very different way.
You talked about Facebook shifting. There was a lot trending where they were recently blocking a lot of content from wineries. And I know in the past dealing with ads with alcohol was always a problem. Are you seeing the marketing numbers drop significantly because of their playing with ads or blocking things lately?
Really, the restrictions aren't the primary issue that's happening. So the biggest issue and the biggest breakdown for Facebook ads was when the iPhone stopped being able to track quite as much. So you saw like ads get more expensive and less effective. Facebook has done a lot of like, you know, their own AI and really advanced stuff. So like some results have gotten better, but quite frankly, things are still more expensive than they used to be, right? So serving an ad is still more expensive now than it was many, you know, like back before this happened in like 2021. So that is the main issue there. I also think consumer behavior has shifted a little bit in terms of their willingness to, again, purchase wine product that they have never tasted before. So this is kind of an issue with like all direct to consumer online sales in the wine industry. So a lot of that relies on brand being recognized, right? Or like being able to leverage something that people will like latch on to. So whether that's press or you could try awards, people don't really respond to that quite as much as they used to. So press is probably the best. And then also you can run ads alongside an influencer. So kind of leveraging somebody else's personality and their network and their trust that people have in them.
So what's trending as the most popular marketing tool in social media? Is it still Facebook? Which one of the platforms is trending the best for marketing?
Well, that's a very hard question to answer because there's marketing. Like, I mean, what metric are we looking at? If we're looking at direct sales, Facebook ads would probably, I guess, be the best social channel. But again, the best and most cost-effective sales channel is going to be your email. But if we're talking about brand recognition or I guess like awareness, brand awareness, the best one, people are going to hate this, the one that's easiest to grow on right now is TikTok. But I haven't seen any wineries really on there. I think this would be great for like probably a younger wine owner or somebody who's willing to be on camera literally every day, because that's what it takes to do well on TikTok. But it is like the only channel where you can really grow. Instagram, it's basically the engagement's so down because they relied so heavily on advertisers. And just because the way that their algorithm is set up, it's really, really, really hard to grow on Instagram. So I think of Instagram as like, you need some awareness tool, whether that's ads, right? You can build awareness via ads. You can build awareness via press. You can build awareness via influencers or TikTok. These are like awareness channels, more or less, right? And then Instagram is like your digital shop, right? Like people go to Instagram when they have already heard about your brand, just because more or less it's really, really hard to get beyond your followers on Instagram. It's hard to go viral there. So people are using Instagram as something that's like they're going to make sure that this is a place they want to go. Like if it's a winery, they want to see the vibe. It's kind of like your digital storefront, right? Like, and it is, they're looking at your website probably. And I don't know, it depends upon their generation though. Some of them might just like be looking at your Instagram and seeing, you know, what your deal is. And they want to see videos and they want to see like, what is this experience going to be like? And they're either going to decide to go or decide to go to a competitor. And if your Instagram doesn't show what they want. Right.
I'm totally impressed, Molly, because I totally misunderstood like the whole, I guess, digital marketing world, because it's really involved. The directions you take in this is just amazing. There's so much to it. I mean, that's why people,
Complex.
listeners and brands or wineries out there, that's why you need Molly and
Oh,
to
thank you.
get in touch with her, because there's a lot to it, and
Absolutely.
to get all this feedback is just great.
I feel like I learned so much
Yeah.
just talking to you these last little bit.
Amazing. Yeah, a little bit more than ChatGPT would probably teach you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Molly. We appreciate your time and letting us into this part of the wine world we never talked about to the listeners. Thank you very much.
Of course, it was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to us today on The Wonderful World of Wine. We have been your hosts, Kim Simone and Mark Lenzi, with our special guest today, Molly Bossardt. You can find more information about Molly on her LinkedIn, as well as her website, breadandbutterdigitalmarketing.com. We are supported by Franklin Public Radio, and you can find us on our website, thewww.wine, as well as social media at The Wonderful World of Wine. Cheers.
Cheers.